Welcome to this walking tour of Sandon. Let's start with the church. The 16th century porch was built soon after the tower and may have been designed by Giuliano Trevise, who worked on Hampton Court in London. The small hole above the doorway leading into the porch is called the alcove and would have held a small statue if the church was Catholic, but Wolsey was lord of the manor and also Protestant, so this didn't happen. The nave was built in the 12th century, which makes it the oldest part of the church along with the chancel. The north wall of the nave would have been taken out when the north aisle was built in the 14th century, and the three arches you can see here were made with stone brought over from Caen in northern France. The roof here is an 1878 roof made of fir, except for one small section here next to the chancel from the original 15th century oak roof. The nave also contains the font, which is an octagonal mid-16th century font with a wooden cover given in 1935 in memory of the then rector's wife. The oak pulpit is also octagonal and dates from the 15th century. It was originally painted in red, green and gold and was then coated in several layers of varnish. The pulpit was eventually cleaned and the varnish removed in 1935. So now moving on to the chancel, which is also 12th century, except for the wall up in the aisle, which was rebuilt during the 15th century. This window here contains the oldest piece of glass in the church, the Darcy family crest, which is either 15th or 16th century, along with other later crests. This window here is dedicated to Stanley Collingham, who died in World War I and is buried in the churchyard, and this one here is dedicated to his father. The ceiling is a 15th century oak roof ceiling and is covered by 35 separate panels. The choir stall to the right was built in 1936 in the memory of John Perry, and the one on the left is early 19th century. Up here is the Jacobean altar table, the late Victorian altar rails made by the local blacksmith. So now we'll ascend the tower, which was built in the early 16th century at about the same time as the porch. Both were possibly by the same architects as Hampton Court, although this is not certain. The tower was also built with crosses of St Andrew, who this church is dedicated to. The organ here was built in 1912 and was moved here from the north aisle in the 1950s, and then restored in 1981. Now the bell tower has a total of 6 bells, with the earliest one dating from 1653, the youngest being the treble, which was only added in 1951. In 2022, 4 of the bells were found to be cracked and were then repaired. Okay, now it's time for the village green. A rare oak, which was a hybrid of Turkey and cork oaks, was planted on the village green in 1887 to commemorate Queen Victoria's Golden Jubilee. However, unfortunately, the tree collapsed due to a fungal infection in 2001. A seat had been built for the tree when it was planted, which was then expanded in the 1970s, and it still stands here today, even though the tree itself is long gone. A pump also stood on the village green, as well as another one down Hall Lane with water pumped from Ladywell Spring, until the mid-1930s when the houses gained pipe water. These houses here were built using bricks from clay pits a man named William Ratcliffe worked off Wood Hill Road in the 19th century. Their roofs were originally thatched, but this was changed to slate later on. The Crown is an 18th century pub, but it was severely damaged by a fire in 2003. Okay, so now it's time for the Lintons and the gable fields, but before we go down them, I'm just going to bring your attention to the post house, which is an 18th century building. It originally served as a village shop until it eventually closed down. So, now on the Lintons and the gable fields. The gable fields is a road with 26 houses on it which date from the 1980s. The site the houses now stand on was originally the earlier Gables farm, which gave the road its name. The Lintons further down contain 40 houses built in 1994. Okay, now it's time for Hall Lane. On the site of the house directly next to the Crown was the village school, which was built in 1850. It was used as a school until it eventually fell out of use in 1961. It was then demolished 5 years later in 1966 after laying vacant. Also down Hall Lane was a village shop for part of the 20th century once the shop and the post house had closed down. Hall Lane, as well as Cards Road and Brookview, which lead just off it, have been developed extensively since the 1920s, just going from a few scattered buildings to what we have today. Thank you for watching this little history tour of Sandon. I hope you enjoyed.